On this episode of I Do Work Here Lady, I'm not a student. I'm actually a Nope, off to detention with you. I've recently started out as a teacher. I was 27 years old when I had my first teaching job. I did some other stuff before, and of course, as the newbie, not everyone working at that school knew me at the time. I look a bit younger than my age, and I usually wear a pair of jeans and a nice blouse/shirt. I was working there for a bit over a month when I was walking through the hallways of the school during class hours, picking up some paperwork and heading to the teacher's room as I had a free period. An older man, I guess in his 40s, stopped me, looking kinda angry. Unknown man: "Excuse me, young lady, where do you think you're going? Why aren't you in class?" Me: I'm not actually a student, but I'm a unknown man. "Like hell you are. I've seen you walking around with the older kids. Go to your class immediately." Me: "Sir, I'm really not a student. I'm actually a teacher. I'm new here, so you probably haven't seen me, but..." Unknown man: "Stop your lying. Go report to the office immediately. I will make sure your parents hear of this. And don't think I won't be looking for you in detention tomorrow." I then go to the office, as I needed to go there anyway, to ask something, and because this guy was way taller than me and looking really angry, my colleagues in the office: "What happened to you?" Me: "I got sent here because I was outside during class hours. Also, could you call my parents because a man expects me in detention tomorrow?" My colleagues basically died of laughter right there, and because there's usually more than one teacher keeping an eye out during detention, and thus I couldn't tell them who of the two males had given me detention, they actually sent me to detention the next day. I took some grading work with me. The unknown man who sent me to detention was looking smug when he saw me sitting in detention, and after a few minutes, one of my colleagues from the office came in and, in the most theatrical voice you can imagine, introduced me as their new colleague. And wasn't I a dear for coming into detention while busy grading papers in order to help them out with unruly students just roaming the hallways during class hours? You should have seen this guy's face. Priceless. For some reason, he never sat at my table during lunch. I can't believe the OP didn't try and resist this or explain further, but just accepted to going to detention in order to do this theatric entrance. I guess maybe she thought that would be more of a burn to this 40-year-old guy instead of just fighting it out. And I mean, how young can the OP really look? If they're 27 when they started teaching, and this is in high school, then this person, the OP, is looking probably 10 years younger than they actually are. I mean, that exists. It's just kind of crazy that it's that convincing that they're in high school to the point that the 40-year-old guy would actually give the OP detention. They really have to get some lanyards or some identification, especially if you're a new teacher in the school. But let me know if you guys have ever seen a situation like this where there was a teacher that was so young that somebody else working at the school thought that they were not a teacher, but instead a student. This next I Do Work Here Lady story has to do with a pretty similar subject titled "Substitute Teacher Thinks I'm Only 14 Years Old." So the preface is, I am a brown 25-year-old male with tattoos up and down both arms with a younger looking face. I work as an instructional assistant at a high school in a large public school district. I support students in their general education classes who qualify for special education support. So here's the story. I arrive in geometry class to support one of my students. I walk in as usual and stood directly behind my student near the front of the class to chat while we waited for class to begin. The substitute teacher saw me standing there chatting and made a beeline directly toward me. Standing inches from my face, she yelled, and I mean screamed, "Get to your seat! Class is going to begin!" in the snarkiest, rudest tone possible. I looked at her inquisitively, held up my staff ID hanging on a lanyard from my neck and said, "I'm actually an IA, and this is one of my students." She had a strange look of bewilderment on her face as if she didn't believe me, and then curled up into a frown. She then proceeded to continue screaming at me, only this time it was to tell me about how students from the class prior to this class were terrible, and how all students at this school were awful to her. She asked if I could get security to remove students from her class because they wouldn't listen to her. I stared at her dead in the face for a solid 10 seconds, said nothing, and then turned to ask my student to get up and go to the library to work with me. I feel terrible for any student who may have been forced to endure this lady as an instructor. I reported the incident to my department head and administrators, and she will not be returning to our school. She and many others are the reason I am currently back in college to attain my master's and teaching certificate. So thanks for that, evil lady. So this is pretty much what happens when you actually do have a lanyard or some sort of staff ID. But he seems to think this lady was an evil lady. It sounds like she's probably just overworked, or she's really overwhelmed because she's immediately going into screaming, which is not the right move at all, regardless if it's a kid or if it's an adult, but then tries to justify it by saying that the class before her was so horrible that they wouldn't listen to her. So it just seems like she's really overwhelmed with a bunch of terrible classroom situations, even if this isn't the right way to handle it. And I'm guessing the school probably stopped calling her back in to do substitute teaching because she couldn't handle the classroom. If she's asking this guy to go ask security to remove students, I'm assuming that's probably because she has already done that herself many times to the point where maybe they're annoyed that they have to keep having security handle her class for her. But let me know what you guys would do if you were in this situation and if you would handle it like this or not. This next one on I Do Work Here Lady is, Lady, I'm the teacher. Please stop yelling at my students. While I was 21 years old and studying for my languages and teaching degree, one of my teachers had a languages school and offered me a job to teach English and French since I'm fluent in both. I would teach 4 times a week and work with the 4 group ages: children, teens, young adults, and adults. On Wednesdays, I started my afternoon with children and ended it with adults. Most adults were over 40 years old and professionals who went to class after work, and some of them wore very formal clothes because of that. One of the kids from the children's intermediate class loved learning English and was a fast learner, so we recommended her to attend an extra children's conversational club class on Monday, the higher level one. While still attending her normal lessons on Wednesdays, she was very excited about it, and her dad, who she had divorced parents, was fine with it. I don't know what the kid's mom understood, but she thought we were somehow setting her back, and the woman decided she couldn't wait and needed to argue with us that same day. So the adult lesson started at 7 p.m. and it was around 6:55, so some of the adults were chilling and talking about their week before class when the lady arrived. She looked around the classroom and went directly to Paul, a very shy, suit-wearing bank manager, and the crazy mom said, "How dare you to pull my kid out of her class and put her on a level for beginners?" Paul said, "Huh?" I said, "Miss, please." Crazy mom, "Be quiet, I'm talking with the teacher." Some of the other students were laughing. Crazy mom, "Stop laughing, you losers. My kid is 9 years old and knows more English than all of you." This is enough. Please get out of the classroom. Crazy mom, "Don't tell me what to do." I'm not telling you this again, but please leave the classroom and stop yelling at my students. Crazy mom points at Paul crazily. "Look, miss, we can talk in my office, but you need to leave this room now." One of the students who owned a restaurant made a joke about dealing with annoying people like her on a daily basis, and the crazy mom got even angrier, but I managed to get her out of the room. I explained again that I was the teacher, but she refused to talk to me because, quote, "You are so young," and yelled a popular yet ridiculous saying about young people. That really pissed me off, and I wasn't very kind when I told her, "Look, miss, I'm their teacher, and I'm your kid's teacher, so if you could please stop acting like a child and say what your problem is, I might be able to help you." Somehow, that snapped her out of her tantrum, and she left slowly and loudly stomping downstairs. It literally took her 5 minutes to get down 16 steps. I went back out to the classroom and apologized to the students, and we had a pretty nice conversation about how culturally here, it is quite common for middle-aged/old people to look down on younger professionals. Some of them even accepted that in the past they acted like the lady in this situation but would never do it again, and others say they would give extra support to their younger colleagues. Somebody actually pointed out that some of the young adult students saw themselves in her poor behavior and decided to never be like that again, and how that was a nice result, along with the question of, did the mom ever understand that the daughter was getting extra opportunities? And the OP responded to this saying that they did. The conversation was a pretty honest chat, and we even ended up using a lot of our mother tongues because some of them were struggling to put their feelings into words. I never talked to the mom again, but apparently she called her ex to tell him how rude I was and to tell him that they needed to get a new teacher. The parents were divorced and the girl lived with her dad but talked to the mom every day. She happily told her about the lessons, but her mom misunderstood her. The poor girl felt terrible about it and constantly apologized, so I had to talk with her about how I know it wasn't her fault. One part part that seems kind of ridiculous is that it took her 5 minutes to get down 16 stairs. I thought that was maybe an exaggeration or something, but the OP actually added to that saying, "That's the funniest part for me. She was stomping on every step, yelling something that I wish I remember what it was." And apparently the saying she was saying that had to do with young people had something to do with, if you lie down with dogs, you get up with fleas, or something like that, or the one who goes to bed wakes up wet. And she said, but to me it sounds super weird because it's always used against young people. A lot of these I do work here ladies scenarios seem to be based around the fact that certain people expect other people to look a certain age for their jobs, and in these ones, some people expect teachers to look a certain age. So let me know what you guys would do if you were in the situation, if you were the teacher and somebody barged in and did all this. And the last episode of our I Do Work Here Lady story for today is "Give me your name right now, you are in big trouble, mister." Right off the bat, he says that he's not a native English speaker, so take everything into context in regards to that. When I was 20 years old, I was going through my studies, and to make it possible, I used to work often in my father's small construction business that has around 40 employees. I've been working there all summer since I was 16 years old, doing various jobs like warehouse clerk, plumber, accountant, etc. At one time, I was managing HR, contracts and part-time employees and such, and was often working after office hours since I needed to attend class during the day 3 days a week. One day at 8 p.m., I get a call from one of our customers asking details about a work site and employees working there. I politely declined, saying that I'm not allowed to give him that information since I'm only working part-time and I don't know him and I can't confirm his identity. I also remind him that the office is currently closed and advised him to call back the next day during work hours when a manager can give him the information. He immediately gets angry and says, "Listen here, I know the owner of this company personally. I need this information and I want it right now." I respond, "Well, if you know him, I'm sure he will gladly respond if you call him on his personal phone." Apparently that's not what he wanted to hear because he went berserk on me. I'll spare you all the details, but he was basically shouting at me. Him, "How dare you speak to me like that? Give me your name right now. You're in big trouble, mister. I'll get you fired for that." Me, "Sure, write it down." I gave my name, which is the same as my father's. Him, "Okay, wait, this name? As in, insert my father's name here." Me, "Yes, I'm his son." Don't let that stop you though. Needless to say, I never heard back from him after that. Turns out he was who he said he was, and we stopped working with him. That is one quick way to lose a business relationship, to start just randomly yelling at people, assuming you know who each person is when you clearly don't because you're asking the guy for his name. In this situation where it was actually an emergency, like it had to do with some sort of critical safety thing, you probably should have just have explained that and said, "I need the number of this person and this is what's sort of going on," even if you can't speak on everything, because it's hard to imagine somebody would call and be this urgent unless there actually is an emergency or if they're just trying to scam you in the quickest way possible. So if you were in this situation, somebody called you while you were at work and this happened to you, what would you do?